Now we progressed quite a lot in these previous chapters, and now if you zoom out a little bit, and it helps to look at the scene through the wireframe view as well, and if we zoom out a little bit, you will see that there is density here on these walls with the door object and the opening and platform. So there is a lot happening here, but we missed something down here, and it will be good in my opinion to balance that composition. So I think here is a good place to put something to balance these and these places, and this will play nicely into the composition theory of primary, secondary and tertiary details and shapes. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a link in the description. I've talked about this a while in my first course. So basically you try to build your scene where on the first trace you recognize these larger shapes, and then on the second and third trace you go deeper and deeper and explore more and more details. So here we are trying to build like that first level of detail where you have these distinct shapes balanced out throughout the scene, that they are cluttered together, and you know, one of them is this door, the second this opening with the platform, and here we have that empty space that I want to fill up right now with some interesting detail. So let me get rid of these annotations here. Let's switch to solid view. And when I was building the scene, there wasn't enough time to like go on and try to find some realistic engineering detail that will work here. And it's hard to talk about realism when you're building a sci-fi scene, but then again, it's good to have like a basic knowledge of some engineering systems that would take in place in some spaceship or something. Even though it's science fiction, it can have the realistic, you know, inspiration and reference. But here I just want to build something that looks cool, basically, that looks like some technical engineering detail, so we don't have to really go into ins and outs of what we are building, as long as it looks cool, as it fills up the composition and looks good on the first glance. So we can get to it right away. And I will now switch the view to the top view by pressing number 7 on the numpad. And now I want to place the cursor in the middle of this quadrant right here. So let's shift right click there, and we can press Shift A and add a circle here. But before we do anything else, I want to raise the number of vertices to 48. I want this to be more detailed. Now we can tab out into the edit mode, press F to fill this. Let's rotate this a little bit and let's extrude to something like this. Okay, and now if we look from this view, this is the detail that will take place here. So now we can give it some general shape, and I like to create a slope here at the top. So Ctrl R, create a loop cut here near the top. Now I will go to the face select by pressing 3 and scale this down to create that slope. And I want to create additional detail here, so I will do another loop cut down here, Ctrl R, and move this up somewhere here. And now we can bevel this, so Ctrl B and bevel with just one segment like this, and I want to push this inside, so Alt E, extrude along normals, even thickness on, and let's push this inside like that. And now to add a little bit more of a detail here, we can select this outer loop, so Alt click here, and we can bevel this with 2 segments or 3. So let's increase the number of segments with the mouse wheel, and let's place it like this. So the width of this loop is basically similar to this inner loop here. Okay, and I think this is a little bit too low, so let me now toggle X-ray, go to the vertex select by pressing 1, select all of this, press G then Z and move this up. And now let's toggle the X-ray again. And what we can do next is add some more details here. And up until now, we almost exclusively used Boolean modifiers to create some more complex structures. But sometimes it's good to stop for a while and think about whether it's better to modify the mesh directly or use Booleans. And sometimes it might be a larger headache to actually use the Booleans. Sometimes it's just easier to modify the mesh itself. And I think this is the case with this kind of rotational object. If you want to extrude some parts along this kind of curved surface and create additional details, it might be easier to actually cut the geometry and extrude these parts yourself. So that's what I want to do right here. I will go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad. Let's go into the edit mode. And now I will create another loop cut here, so Ctrl R and loop cut right here. And now we can go to the face select by pressing 3. So here we have a middle edge loop, and I want to count 3 faces to the either side. So select this one here and this here, and we'll extrude them. So press Alt E and extrude along normals. And you can see how nicely they play with the curved surface when you're extruding along normals. This would be kind of hard to append with the Boolean modifier. You would have to create this kind of element and then snap to the face to align the rotation and stuff like that. So basically it's much more easier to just cut in and extrude this yourself. And basically it's really easy to get rid of that later when you want to delete this and cover up the holes or something. So that's why I've chosen this approach here. And now we can select these top edges. So press 2 for edge select, select these top edges, and we'll bevel them as well. So something like this. And now we can proceed and add some additional detail here on the sloped area there. So Ctrl R, and I want to do 3 new cuts there and release with the right mouse button. And now we can look from the top, and we can go to the face select by pressing 3 and select this face right there. And I want to select this loop all the way up until here. So we are starting basically at a 90 degrees angle on this side, continue the 90 degrees here, and ending up with 45-degree angle. And now we can extrude this. So Alt E, extrude faces along normals, and extrude the detail like this. So up until now, this was really simple. And here I want to extrude inside another detail, but with the beveled corners. So we can now select this face right here and select these 7 faces. Control click here. So we are leaving these 2 out of it. And now I want to press Shift D to duplicate and P to separate. We'll create a new object from this. And now let's go into the edit mode and press Alt E and extrude along normals, and you will see how nicely we are copying this curvature. So this is basically the same stuff that we did right here. But now I want to go to the local view. Let's rotate this, and we can select these back faces right here. And I want to keep the curvature, keep those angles. So again, I will press Alt E and extrude along normals, and I will extrude inside. I think something like this will be fine. And now we can go to the edge select, select this loop in the middle, and press Ctrl X to get rid of that. And now we have piece that we can use to cut out some shape. So let's press slash on the numpad to exit the local view. And now while in the edge select, we can select these corner edges there, like this one as well. So all the corners, and bevel them a little bit. So let's press Ctrl B and bevel them 3 segments like that. Don't worry about the topology of this object. It doesn't really matter. In this case, we'll use it just to cut out the Boolean shape. And now we can tab out, select the main cylinder object, and do the same treatment as before. Right click, shade smooth. Now enable auto smooth and go all the way to 180 degrees, and then let's add that bevel modifier, disable clamp overlap, and go to something really small like maybe 0.01, and let's enable that angle mode, increase the number of segments, and enable the harden normals in the shading, so we have that nice hard surface beveled object. And now for the angle we can go 35, so we smooth this out, and so far so good. And if we look here, it'll help to switch those miters as well there. So now we can try to cut this out from that object. So let's select this Boolean object, shade is smooth, shift click the main cylinder and Control minus. And of course we can fix the stack here, but you can see this doesn't work that well. And that's because we reused the mesh to create the cutout object. So basically it meets at the same exact places that these vertices were originally. So you need to scale this up a little bit. But first let me switch to the medium point. So let's enable wireframe overlay and let's go into the edit mode. Select all, and I will use Alt S to scale along those normals. So we are basically expanding the object, and I want to make this a little bit larger than the original, so something like this. And if we now disable the wireframe overlay, this looks just fine. But here you can see sometimes when you have a curved shape like this, it's actually easier to extrude details like that. Here I only used the Boolean because I wanted those beveled corners. That would destroy the topology of the original cylinder quite a lot, so I've defaulted into using the Boolean here. I think the result is quite alright. And now we can create a detail that again would be very difficult to achieve without the Booleans. So let's select the cylinder, now go into the edit mode, and I will place the cursor right here. So Shift S and cursor selected. That's only to have the cursor right there on the side. And now we can add a cube. So Shift A, mesh, cube, and let's scale this down to something like this. And I want to scale this on the Z as well. And I want to enable wireframe overlay as well, so we actually see where we are overlapping with the original mesh. So we can now scale this up like this, go down a little bit, and here we can select this face, press G then Z and move this down. And now I want to bevel these sides, so 2 for edge select and Alt Control click here to select these edges all around that face loop, and let's press Ctrl B and bevel this with 5 segments. And careful about those corners, so we are not going all the way here. We want to create this radius in a way that we are not intersecting too many edges on the original cylinder, so something like this. And now we can shade this smooth and subtract from this object. So Control minus and fix the stack here. So bring it over the bevel. Let me push this outside a little bit. So G then Y. Okay. So here you could see how you can create the details on some curved object like this. And we used several techniques. We used extrusion, where it was very easy to achieve and to use that extrude. We used Boolean modifier, where it was a little bit harder, but at the same time it benefits the topology of the original object. And here we simply used the Booleans because it was very easy and it was the fastest and most effective way how to achieve a cutout like this. So if we now turn off the wireframe overlay, you can see how you can detail your object using different techniques. So now we can proceed and add one last detail, and let's select the cylinder object, go to the edit mode, select this edge and snap a cursor there. And now we can tab out, press Shift A and add a cube here. We can tab in and scale this down on X, so scale it like this. And here I want to enable that wireframe overlay and maybe scale this down a little bit more. And now I want to bevel this edge that cuts into the object, so select this edge here and press Ctrl B and bevel it. I think the 5 or 6 segments will be fine here, so something like this. Okay. And now tab out, shade this object smooth, shift click the cylinder, and let's press Ctrl/, so we are creating a panel there. As you can remember, now we have 2 objects created and we need to fix the stack on both of those. So let's fix this one here and here as well. So this way we cut nicely into the object and we will be able to color this differently later. And I want to create one more panel right here, and we will reuse some of the geometry. So just select this Boolean object here. Let's press Shift D and go to the edit mode. Let's select all with A and Alt S to scale this inside along normals. Okay, now I will exit the edit mode, press G then Y and push this inside here. Shift click the cylinder and Ctrl/ again. I want to create the panel there as well. And again, we'll fix both stacks. Now we can proceed and create some kind of structure that holds this generator or something in place. I want to build a ring around this. So first of all, I will use some of the geometry we have already in place. So let's select the cylinder object, tab into the edit mode, and I will toggle the X-ray so I better see what I'm selecting. Look from the bottom and select this face. Now let's double check if we have the merge vertices disabled, and press Shift D to duplicate and P to separate, and select this new object. And we'll now remove these boolean modifiers here, but leave the bevel modifier in place. We will make use of that later. And now let's look from the top. So press 7 on the numpad, go into the edit mode of this new object, press 8 to select all and scale it up, but not all the way, so we don't go over the half here, over this floor rail. So something like this here. And now we can press I to inset, and inset in a way so it barely touches the cylinder, but it's quite larger. Now we can delete the inside, so press X and delete faces. Now we can select all. Let's rotate this a little bit, and I want to extrude this up, so press E and extrude like this. And now toggle the X-ray, so we better see what we have here. And I probably went too far on the size of this. If we look from the side here, this goes a little bit over, so I want to reduce the size on this. So alt click the loop here, press S, then Shift Z and scale this down like this. Okay, and now I want to extrude the part here, so let's select this face and control click here. So I'm selecting the 10 faces on this side, and I want to extrude them on the X, so press E, extrude, and S and X to scale them to 0, so we have a flat surface there. And now I want to snap this to the edge of the room, and I already have snapping set to vertex, so you can now just press G then X and snap this to this corner here. And now we can bevel this top part, so press 2 for edge select, alt click here and control B to bevel this like that. So I think 5 segments will be enough here. Okay, and now I want to add one additional detail here, so let's go to the face select, alt click here to select this loop all around, but I want to hold shift and deselect this one face here, and I will inset this, so press I and do an inset like this, and then scale on Z a little bit so it's not that high. And I want to extrude this inside, so alt E, extrude faces along normals, and extrude it inside like that. And now we can use some boolean to give it some kind of sophistication. So let's tab out and let's snap the cursor to the origin point, so cursor to select it, and now press Shift A and add the plane. Now we will scale this up, so go into the edit mode and scale it up like this, so it's larger than the ring. And now we can move this up to somewhere here. Let's look from the front, and then press E and extrude it like this, so it goes in the middle. Maybe we can just select all and maybe scale it on the Z a tiny bit more like that. Okay, and now I want to bevel this side, so select these 2 edges here and let's create the bevel there. I think 3 segments on either side will be fine like this. And now tab out, shade smooth, and we will control minus to cut it out from this object here. And let's fix the stack. We have the original bevel modifier there, and now I see some shading issue here, and that probably has to do something with normals. So let's select this boolean object that we extruded from plane, go into the edit mode, select all and Shift N to fix the normals. And now we can do the same here, so select all and fix the normals, and now it's all good. And now we can select this and push this a little bit on the x-axis so it doesn't go so far. And now we have this interesting cutout here. And now we can select all of these objects, so you can rotate it like this and create a selection around those so it's easier, and then shift click some of these that are left, and with the ring as last we can press Ctrl P and parent the object. So we have now one object that controls all of these details, and we can name this generator. You can of course name it whatever you want, even the dishwasher, doesn't really matter. Now if you look from this side, this actually balances that composition quite nicely. And now I want to push this a little bit down, so press G then Z and move this inside the floor a tiny bit, but not all the way, just in a way that these bevels touch there. But now it goes into the floor in really ugly way, and I think it will smarten it up if we create some kind of cutout there. So let's select the ring structure here, and let's go into the edit mode. First of all, we'll need to select the bottom part, so I will toggle X-ray and look from the bottom, and we can now go to the edge select, alt click here to select this loop all around, and now continue by holding shift and clicking these loops, and alt shift click here to close that, press shift D, enter P to separate, and now tab out, select the new object, go into the edit mode, select all and press F. So we created an end there, but it will be enough to create that cutout into the floor. So now let's look from the front by pressing 1, and we can move this down a bit so you can see the floor object here. We want to go under that, and now we can press E and extrude this up. And now if we disable the X-ray, we can go to the face select, alt click here to select this loop all around, and press Alt E, extrude faces along normals. Let's enable even thickness by pressing S, and by holding shift we can do this in small increments and decide on how far we want this to be offset, like that. And now we can tab out, shift click the floor object and Control minus. So this is now sitting inside the floor, and we need to fix the stag, of course. So let's move this above the bevel modifier, and let's check if we didn't break it here, because it's a little bit too close to that bevel, but it's all right. And now we can select this new Boolean object and parent to ring structure as well. So Control P, object. So now if you decide to move this, for example, on Y-axis, it will nicely cut into the floor. And that's it basically for this chapter. We can now move on with the rest of the project.